This one is Karolin Potter, Waihoro, Spreydon, Cashmere Community Board, and I think I can see Lee Sanson with you.
Cruisy chair.
Oh, hell no.
Kia ora tātou, I'm here with my deputy Lee Sampson and we're going to alternate in our presentation. I learned about it half an hour ago in the dog park that this was on, and that's my own stupidity, but thank goodness for Lee. He was on alert.
Take your mask off, Karolin, if you want to.
That's right, thank you.
Yeah.
It's great watching a meeting like this without a mask and not on Zoom. The Selwyn Street Master Plan, before I start, Liam, the question that you asked Mike, I thought I'd get rid of that first. Our board hasn't formally discussed the rates on vacant land in the inner city, but we support the increased rates on vacant land in the inner city. I would know which way the majority, not counting one person, the majority of the board would vote on that issue, and because we've discussed these issues before, and our board would support increase the rates on vacant land. Selwyn Street Master Plan, this is the top priority for our board this year. This small suburb, not known for having an enormous income in that area, was badly damaged in the earthquakes, lost much of its built heritage, including a coffee shop that was the centre of the community and the centre of an artistic community as well, that has sat there ever since the earthquakes with repairs on it, but has had no repairs take place. And so it's a pretty depressed looking area. We are lucky enough that intensive housing is being built in that area, and the buildings that have so far been built are actually quite attractive. And we look forward to seeing how that developer is going to do the rest of the buildings. But the council needs to do its bit. It's not a lot of money these days, and we believe it should be starting and right now, that it should occur this year, and that the council should be more generous than it has been.
Okay, pedestrian safety improvements in Cashmere and St Martin's. This is a legacy issue. We would have spoke to this in the monthlies, but we're just going out to consult at the moment. We just want to get on with this really. So this is going to make a real difference to pedestrians and cyclists who are traversing those roundabouts. It's a pragmatic solution, but it will make a difference. So we just want to get on and do these improvements, which are going to be funded. They're going to be funded out of a minor road safety improvement project regardless. So we strongly support this.
The Hoonhay Community Centre has been vulnerable for several years since Melanie was instrumental in starting a campaign to save the Children's Library on a large piece of land on Hoonhay Road. There isn't a community centre in Hoonhay. We're delighted that it is not only surviving but thriving, and it is now headed with a community of young and older people who are enthusiastic and energetic and have celebrations 5 or 6 times a year. The most recent one has been the Easter celebration, but also they had a collection for the local food bank at the community centre about 4 weeks ago, and which was highly successful and included the very fashionable tampons to be distributed to those who can't afford them. So we support the Hoonhay Community Centre survival, and we look forward to it receiving some of the funds from the Centennial Hall demolishment allocation.
I'm just going to talk about transport again, and I'm going to talk about the triangle around Dyers Pass, Hackthorn, Cashmere roads. Again, legacy issues. We've just seen an initial design on Cashmere, Dyers Pass, Colombo. Many of you will know that roundabout. It's got serious gradient problems. It's terrible to traverse as a pedestrian or cyclist. We've currently got funds in there for 2024. So again, we just want to get on and do those works. It'll make a real difference to our community. So we strongly support this in our annual plan.
The Apawaho Heskett River Major Cycleway. If any of you stood outside Cashmere High and watched the kids coming to school these days, you'd see at least a third of them on bikes. It's an absolute celebration, and it's not seen by the public. If you stood on the riverbank outside there at Ashgrove Terrace, or if you stood on the main access road, Barrington Street, or if you stood on Rose Street and watched the young people coming in, you'd be seeing them on bikes. And the girls are increasing in numbers. So our board absolutely supports Cycleways. We believe in the philosophy behind Cycleways. We support it. We want the suburban attachments to our major cycleways to be brought forward in the budget, and we particularly want this cycleway, the Apawaho Heskett River Major Cycleway, which is due to be completed in the financial year 2025. We consider it one of our most important projects. Thank you.
I think we'll both talk to this, but South Library Service Centre and earthquake repairs. South Library is where we meet as a community. It's a vibrant hub for our community. It's extremely well utilised. We need to see it reinstated in whatever form that takes. I'd say the community board in historic annual plans and long-term plans, we've been really open to the delays, but they cannot happen any further. The asset is really well run down now. I think the temporary works that we originally put in there were only supposed to be for 5 years. So we really need to get on South Library and actually do that work. We also would ask that the board does have some representation in the steering board. And we think there's some operational improvements that could be made to that facility. So we'd really like some more involvement on a local level in terms of the shape and form of that new facility. We do also see some synergy with the Mid-Heathcote master plan. Similarly that we've got in town at the moment, where we respond to the river and we've got some step downs and we've got some steps. The Mid-Heathcote linear plan actually revolves responding better to the river corridor going through there. So it actually has some platforms going in, so it can actually respond better to the environment. So it really makes some sense to dovetail those projects together. The board would also like to see some consideration towards a Torreyo Name in the repaired or reinstated building. Yep, we just need to get on with this. Is there anything you'd like to add, Karolin, on that one?
I mean, the South Christchurch Library is the most boring name in the whole world, so for it to be given a Torreyo Name would be a great improvement. This was the first of the cafe libraries. This was the first of the libraries that are now being built in your area. The fact that it should even be saved because of that reason. It is a lifesaver for young women in particular who are brand new parents. They are the ones that started to meet there, but everyone meets there now, including older people. And this library has stood there for too long. It is more than an asset. It is, in that overused word, it is an icon in our area. And we can't do without it. And the repair has to be quick and immediate. Thank you.
Well said, well said. And back to you, sorry, Karolin.
Oh,
no, sorry, no, me, no. Coronation Reserve, we've received a number of submissions from local residents just to improve a reserve up on the hill. It is largely endorsed by staff, so it would make sense to do some proactive work on there and actually get on top of the works in that reserve. It has been left for a long time, so the board supports an increased budget of 100,000 over financial years 2023 and 2024, again to get on top of the landscape plan and actually put some tracks through there so it could be better utilised and embraced by the community. Okay.
improved access to buses?
Oh, no, sorry, Mid-Heathcote master plan, I think I talked to that in terms of the South Library, but again, we do see it's a project that's been deferred. We want to see that, we want to see that happen now. It's really important that we respond to that river corridor, especially around South Library.
Yep. Not in the least to get in some native plantings in there. We're a little bit sick of the number of exotics that tend to be put into the ground in the absence of anything else. Improved access to buses. We have a terrible record on buses in our area. Beckenham has no buses. Cashmere has no buses. It's got the most expensive bus stop in Christchurch, but it's got no buses. We've got whole areas where I can't walk to a bus. It's too far. And it's not a record that should continue. We have an ageing population in Spreydon particularly. I think it's the oldest population in Christchurch, and the fact that we haven't got easily accessible buses in many of our flat areas and the entire hills is shameful, absolutely shameful. And we're, to the extent that we're prioritising, as we have done for a while, on seats in between bus stops. So that we can get people to the blasted bus stops that only exist in a very few places. It's unfair, the level of service by buses in our area. It's unfair, and it's not appropriate when we're trying to get people into public transport.
I've got an item here that says library fines, but I think it's job done here, so thank you. Well done.
Recreation and sports fees. And we're Spreydon in Hoonhay and Addington, we have suburbs where a lot of kids can't access formal sports. They can't access swimming lessons apart from the few that they get at school these days, and they can't access athletic or sports in any way because it costs too much. If the council can just keep kids' entrance fees low or lower, that would be helpful to the people who live in our area.
Green space on Spreydon.
Oh, Spreydon area.
Yep.
This is my pet subject. Within 100 metres of my house in Spreydon, there are probably 8 sections with 7 houses going on each 400, 500, 600 square metres. In the road next door to mine, there are 4 sections with 7 or 8 houses going on each section. They are huge, they are tall, and our board backs them. We back intensive housing. We wish there were design standards. We wish there were the council's footprint all over design, actually, but we don't have that. Maybe it will come one day. It should have come before. We wish there were design standards, but in the meantime, kids are going to grow up without grass, and they're going to grow up without green spaces, and they're going to grow up without wild green spaces. And we believe that developers' contribution in Spreydon should stay in Spreydon to address the discrepancy between the rich and the poor, the rich may even get protection for their character housing, and we in the meantime are left with deep ditch gutters, poor footpaths that trip people up, and no green spaces or very little green space. And that is not fair. We are going to exacerbate the difference. He's going to disagree with me in a minute.
No,
but we're going to exacerbate the difference between those who live in comfortable and expensive housing and those who live in these big housing complexes without green space. And we don't want, as a council, we don't want to be supporting the exacerbation of that difference.
I think that when we have conversations with the community, when we've got intensive housing, which we support as a community board, the problem we have on a local level is we see very little upside on a local level. So we don't see any street renewals, we don't see investment in services. And I think it was probably erroneous decision last year to actually reduce development contributions. So I think in hindsight, we've also now got a mechanism through the Enabling Housing Supply Act, which I don't think we're fully utilising. So I think if the local community saw some more upside, if we saw some investment in green spaces, if we saw some investment in their communities, it might be a different story. So I think that's what we hear on a local level. So we really need a working group on that particular item. And I completely agree with what Karolin said in terms of green space and future provision. It gets harder and harder the longer we leave it. So thank you.
Thank you. You said better than I did. Thank you very much. Adult playground, I won't mention it because I've talked to you about this before. It's not too different from the green space issue, actually. I think we need a destination playground for lonely adults, and where they can pretend that they're going to go and do exercise, but what they're really wanting to do is talk to people. I think we need a Margaret Mayhew for grown-ups. And I'm considering 18 up to be the older adult. We need something that gets people into a crowd, into a community, sitting in conversational seating and pretending that they're going to play chess or do some fitness or make a speech or go to the little library or go on an adult swing, which is easy to do. It's easy to pretend that you're doing that when really you want to be able to sit in conversational seating and have a conversation. And without a destination, and our libraries do provide destination, which is wonderful, but without a destination, these people sit at home and they're lonely. They're desperately lonely. And there's so many of them.
I'm conscious of time.
Yeah.
So local cycle connections, we've already touched on this, so I don't think I need to reverse it much, but we've put all the main arterial routes in for the major cycleways. It's completely nonsensical now that we're not connecting up the key activity centres or schools, because that's what's really going to get the net gains. So unless we're going to invest in the secondary networks, the connection into Westmoreland is a particular case that we've traversed as a community board. So unless we're going to do that, it's always going to be the Achilles heel in the major cycle network unless we're going to connect our major centres. So I'll move back to you, Karolin, if I can, on
toilets. All the toilets in our area were built in the 60s. They were built almost at exactly the same time, you can tell. And so are yours. So prioritising the upgrade of toilets is a really hard thing to do when they're all looking disgusting at the same time. But we'd like to get on with it. The council, it's like the sewerage and the pipes. The council, it should have been on the list of council to revolve over the years because they're all looking equally degraded. But our priority in our area is Hoonhay Park. It's incredibly well used. It's got a lot of organised sport on it. We need good toilets for the people to go into.
Okay, and just this is the last item, so we're nearly there. Erosion and sediment control. I know we've been talking about that in terms of bylaws and council policy recently. We just want to make sure that we do have staff resources to be able to administer monitoring. With the new enabling housing supply bill, there is going to be more potential for intensification even on the hills. So we know we've got sensitive soils up there that can migrate. So it's equally important that we do actually have the right resources on board at council so we can monitor and make sure we aren't getting run off into our most polluted already Heathcote River. So thank you.
Thank you.
Can I draw your attention and all of the community board's attention to the draft housing and business choice plan change, which is on the agenda at the moment, where the council is proposing to start charging developers financial contributions if their developments leave a site with less than 20% tree canopy cover, and money raised through financial contributions would then be used by the council to plant trees on publicly owned land around the city. But I think that the feedback that you'd be wanting to give is that focused on the area where the tree canopy has been lost, and that's come through from others as well. So I'd encourage you and other community boards to take that issue there. And heard your message about South Library. It's not an asset that's been sweated, it's an asset that is now exhausted. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
The